All right, good evening, everyone. Welcome to the Majors and Quinn YouTube channel. My name is Annie, and I am the events coordinator at Majors and Quinn Booksellers in Minneapolis. This is Max. He is making his presence known. We're very pleased to have you join us this evening on our YouTube channel with our local author, a friend of the store, Zoë François. We are very happy to be celebrating the launch of her latest cookbook, Zoë Bakes Cakes. That is officially launched into the world tomorrow, Tuesday, March 16th, and we're having a little publication day eve party here tonight. Zoe's going to tell you about the book and also do a little bit of a demo for you. That's the super exciting thing about these virtual events. You get to see a little bit of the work happen behind the scenes, something we couldn't do in the bookstore. So please ask questions as we go. We will also take questions at the end. If you're watching on YouTube here, you should have a chat section available to you. So ask questions in the chat. Also just say hello. Let us know where you are watching from. Say hi. I'll also be dropping a link to the Majors and Quinn website where you can purchase signed copies of Zoë Bakes Cakes that will start shipping out very soon. And we are so thankful if you do choose to buy the book, or if you already have bought the book through majorsandquinn.com. That is super supportive of a local independent bookstore. So thank you very, very much for doing that. So ask questions. We will definitely take them at the end, but if there are some good questions about process while Zoe is demonstrating, I might chime in and ask that question as we go. So thanks very much, everyone, for being here. Thank you for supporting Majors and Quinn. Thank you for supporting Zoe. Let me introduce you to Zoe. I am sure you are all familiar with her work, especially if you've been shopping at Majors and Quinn for quite some time. We have sold many of her books that she's co-authored. But if it's your first time with Majors and Quinn event or with Zoe's work, then here we go. Zoë François studied art at the University of Vermont while also founding a cookie company as a way to earn extra money. She then traveled through Europe, tasting pastries along the way, and later studied at the Culinary Institute of America in New York. Since then, she's been a pastry chef at several Twin Cities restaurants and has worked repeatedly with Andrew Zimmern. Together with Jeff Hertzberg, she wrote the book Artisan Bread in 5 Minutes a Day, which turned into a best-selling series. She created the Zoë Bakes website in order to share her passion for pastry, and currently airing on Magnolia Network, which you can find on Discovery Plus, is her new show, Zoë Bakes. Zoe lives in Minneapolis with her husband and 2 sons, her best creations yet. Zoe, thank you so much for being here. I'm sorry.
Yeah, thank you.
Loud. And take it away. Make us a cake.
I will. I'm going to make you a cake, and I have a little sous chef poodle sitting at my feet right now, so I might have to climb over him. But thank you all for joining me. This is such a thrill, and it's so funny when you write a book because you do it all by yourself, and it's kind of an intimate process, and then all of a sudden you share it with the world, and it's so exciting. And this is my very first event with the book, so thank you. It's such a thrill to have you here. So I wanted to make the devil's food cake from the book because I love it so much, and it's very easy, and I don't need a mixer to do it. So all I need is a bowl and a whisk, and you will see that I have my scale here because one of the things that I want to do with this book, all of the recipes are in cups and in weights, but I would love for everybody to bake with weights because it's more consistent. I think it's easier. And so I want to show you how to use my scale. So I turn it on. I've already weighed out the sugar. And this is the beauty of using weights, is that once I have the bowl on there, I can just keep adding ingredients right onto it. So, make a mess there. So I just add, except I have to read this backwards. There we go. Yep, so there's my flour, and then I'll add my cocoa powder. One thing about cocoa powder is that it can get very, very lumpy. And so what I like to do is add it through a sifter. And so I just put the sifter right in the bowl. Then I zero out my scale, and then I add my cocoa powder right into the sifter. And that way I can sift all the lumps out and weigh it at the same time. So need 50 grams. And like I said, all of the recipes are also in cups. So if you don't have a scale, it's just absolutely fine. The other thing that's really lumpy is baking soda. And baking soda, you want to make sure that you get all those lumps out, because there's nothing worse than biting into a cookie or a cake that has a lump of baking soda in it. So I just break up the lumps a little bit, but then I put that through the sifter too. So right onto the sifter. Now I can just sift all that out. Can you see that? Can you see all the huge lumps from the cocoa powder? Can you see that? I think so. And so I just press it through, press all those lumps out of there, get it nice and even. And this way I don't have to worry about whether or not those lumps are going to work themselves out while I'm whisking it. So then I'll whisk all my dry together. So this is just super, super simple recipe. Whisk all the dry together and then add all of the wet. So I have a couple of eggs. Put those right in to the bowl. And then I have some oil. And I forgot my coffee that is in, this is buttermilk. And I forgot my coffee that is in the microwave. Do you mind grabbing? My husband is here helping me with my camera work, and will now deliver my coffee. Oh, off screen. So some hot coffee right into the bowl. All just gets mixed together. And just making sure that I have all the dry and all the wet work together. One thing that you want to keep in mind is that I have you would call this an egg whisk and not a balloon whisk or a sauce whisk. And so it has, the tines on this are kind of far apart. If you have a whisk that's too tightly bound, it's harder to get the mixture smooth. It all just wants to sort of get caught up in your whisk. So one that has nice open tines. And that's it. I just made devil's food. So super, super easy. All you need is a bowl and a whisk, and that's it. So let me get this out of the way. And then I have my pans. Oh, I forgot my vanilla. So get that in there. This is my homemade vanilla. It's just vanilla beans that I cut in half. This is in the book. I cut them in half lengthwise, scrape out all the seeds, put them in a bottle like this, and then add vodka to it. You have to let that steep for I do it for like a few months even to get really intense flavor, but it's super fun and really tasty. And every time I use a vanilla bean in a recipe, I just continually add it to the bottle and just shake it up. So, okay, so I have my cake batter all whisked together here. And then I always start by prepping my pans. So I have my cake pans. I like these cake pans that have the straight sides. Sometimes you find cake pans that have, they're sort of at an angle like that. The only reason they design them like that is so that they can stack together, and so they're easier to store. But then you have these cakes that have these like weird sides on them. So I like the ones that are nice and straight up and down. Get my myself a spatula, and then I just make sure that I get the pans even. You can either do it by weighing it on the scale, or I will show you my very technical way of making sure that the pans are evenly filled. Okay, so it smells so good. So this cake, this devil's food cake, is probably one of my favorites in the book. It has lots of coffee. It has the buttermilk in it. It has a little bit of rum in it. But the coffee is just to sort of balance out the sweet. It does not taste like coffee. A lot of people ask me if the coffee is like a really pronounced flavor in the recipe, and it's not. It's just to keep that flavor really balanced. Now what I do, because I've whisked some air into it and I don't want to have like air bubbles in my cake, is I thwack it down on the counter. So this could get a little bit noisy. And that drives the air bubbles up. You can't do this with every single recipe because some recipes are a little bit more delicate. Like if you whipped a lot of air into egg whites or something, you don't want to be thwacking it on the counter. But this is a recipe, and I tell you in the book whether or not you should thwack it on the counter or not. But this is a recipe that does well to get rid of some of those bubbles. Okay, so here's how I determine. You look at them, and then I put my finger in one and then put my finger in the other, and they should be at the same height, and they're not. So take a spoon, and I'm just going to scoop a little bit of this one into this, and that's it, folks. This is my super duper technical way to make sure they're the same, and that looks great. So now these will go into the oven and get baked up. Put them here for now. Graham, can you grab me a towel over there? Thank you. So I had baked these earlier, so they're nice and cool. Thank you. They're nice and cooled off, and I can work with them. So when you're baking your cakes, you need to allow enough time for them to cool, because I'm going to be putting buttercream on these. And so if the cake isn't cool, the buttercream will melt on there. So you want to make sure that you allow yourself enough time that you can cool off your cakes in time to buttercream them. So let me grab my buttercream. I just gave it a tiny little whirl in my mixer before I'm going to use it, because if it's sitting in the bowl, it can settle and get little air pockets, and then you won't get a nice smooth cover on your cake. So I'm just using a chocolate buttercream from my book. This is a Swiss meringue buttercream, and it's right in the book. I don't have time to make that completely tonight, but all the directions are in there. I have this chapter in the book called The Cake Academy, and it takes you through some of the more technical aspects of baking. So if you are interested in some of the food science or the technical bits of baking, dive right into it. If you want to go straight to a recipe, you can skip it all together. But I love that stuff. I mean, that sort of like little itty bits of geekiness are exactly what I love about baking. But an absolute beginner can move through this book without ever dipping into that. Okay, so I have my cakes. I have my buttercream. This is one of my favorite tools. It's just a cake turner. And there's all different kinds. I really like this one because it has a really nice heavy base to it, and so it doesn't move around. I have a plastic one that I even travel with, and it's very small and flat, not nearly as stable as this, but it absolutely gets the job done. And I think it's like $15. So you don't have to spend a fortune, but you want something that's going to turn, because that's going to help you when you're decorating your cakes. Okay, so to get the cake out of here, I've run a little paring knife around the edge of my cake, and then it can just come right out. I had lined my cakes with butter and then a piece of parchment. And the parchment is awesome because it acts as like a little bit of a guarantee, a little bit of an insurance that your cake is just going to slip right out of there. So there's my first layer. And I'll just stick this right onto, I put it onto a cardboard round because that way I can decorate my cake. I can lift it up. I can put it onto a serving tray. I can bring it over to a friend's house. It just makes the decorating process so much easier. So a cardboard round right onto my cake turner. And now I can decorate with my buttercream. So I'm just going to fill this with a little bit. Now you can see that my cake is domed a little bit. I don't worry about it. If you wanted to, let me show you. If you want to, you can get rid of a little bit of that with a super slicer knife. Where did it go? Here we go. So it's just a serrated knife. It's nice and long, so it'll go all the way through the cake. And I can just take, I'm not going to go all the way down to the bottom of the dome, just take off some of it, just so that the cake is a little bit flatter. And this is awesome because now this is my little chef snack. I'll just save that. And so I can take a little bit of the cake off, and now I can decorate. Puts that layer in the middle. This way that the cakes will go together a little bit smoother, and I won't have so much buttercream between them. Okay, so, and you can fill the center of this with whatever you want. So, I mean, I have lots and lots of fillings in the book. I have pastry cream. You could even just do this with a really nice whipped cream and some fresh fruit. Buttercream, I have, I think, like 4 or 5 different kinds of buttercream, depending on what you're doing and what your mood is. This one, the Swiss meringue one, is just so silky and beautiful. And then I just added some melted dark chocolate to it, which gives it this beautiful color and flavor. And now we'll do the same thing with the second layer of cake. This so I can flip it out. There we go. And then I can trim off just the top of this layer, just like this. There we go. And then what I want to do is peel off the paper. And this time, because this is going to be the top of the cake, instead of having the domed on the top, I'm going to flip it around and have the bottom, because the bottom is perfectly flat. And so that the top of the cake is going to be as flat as possible. And then I don't have to worry about that dome. I'm going to just spackle some of the buttercream onto the sides of the cake. And that will fill in any gaps that you see on the sides. And I'm going to put a big, huge blob on the top. And I'll show you in a minute why. So maybe a little bit more than you would think that you need on the top, but we're going to end up taking some of that off. So it's not going to be a huge, thick layer of buttercream. So just spread this out. I'm trying to get it as flat on the top as possible. So you don't want it to dome on the top. You want it to be kind of flat on the top. And then you want to push it just beyond the edge so that you have this like little tap on the top of your cake. So you can see I'm going just tiny bit, like 1/4 of an inch beyond the top. And you will see in a minute why I do that. So just as flat as you can get it on the top. I'm not trying to get this perfectly smooth. I'm just getting it on there. And now I'll finish the sides. And like I said, just sort of spackling it on. Nothing pretty. This is like super rustic at this point. And then we'll go back and we'll clean it all up and make it nice and smooth. But look at this, it's so beautiful. I love this buttercream. Okay, so just cover it all on there, nice and thick. You want to, my batches of buttercream are pretty big, and it's because I feel like some people, if they have a little batch of buttercream, they want to sort of get it on there and smooth it out, and they don't put enough buttercream on to really be able to get a nice smooth finish, because it's too, there's just not enough buttercream to work with. And so you end up seeing cake through the buttercream. So I like a nice big batch of buttercream so that you have enough to work with. You can get a really nice finish on it. And if you have any left over, you can just freeze it for another project, just a snack, but it freezes really well. Okay, so get it on there. You can see it's not exactly as elegant as I would want, so, but it's on there and it's totally covered. I have covered every inch of this cake, but now we want it to be smooth. We want to create a really beautiful, smooth canvas for whatever decorating we decide to do. So I'm going to take that same spatula, clean up my area here. I usually try to clean up any crumbs or something, because I don't want those crumbs to now stick to the outside of my cake. I want my cake to be perfectly clean and free of any crumbs. In the book, I do go through a process called crumb coating, and that's when you put a tiny little skim of the buttercream on the cake and then freeze the cake for like 10-15 minutes. That locks in all the crumbs, and that way you don't have to be as careful, especially if you're new at decorating. It's a great step to give you a little more insurance that, especially if you're doing like a devil's food cake with white icing, that you're not going to end up with all these dark speckles on the outside. So look for the crumb coat in the book, but I just went for it. I just covered it all up, put a nice thick layer of buttercream on there, and now I'm going to smooth it out. So I take my spatula, I'm going to hold the spatula at about a 20-degree angle away from the cake, straight up and down, and I'm moving the turntable and not the knife. So I don't want to be doing this because you'll never get it smooth that way. You want to hold it straight up and down and just let the turntable do the work for you. And I'm just taking off a tiny little bit at a time, and I'm scraping it clean after each turn. And just keep going. If you end up with a spot that has like a little hole in it, you can always take your spatula, fill it in, and then do the turns again. And just keep going until you have it as smooth and straight as you can. The other thing that you can do, you can use a spatula, but you can also use, this is called a bench scraper, and it's literally used to clean a bench just by scraping it, the counter. You can use this by just holding it flat onto your turner and turn your cake. And that gives you a really nice, straight-sided cake. I'm going to go back to my spatula, and now I need to clean up the top. So remember when I first put the buttercream on the cake and I went just slightly beyond the edge? I did that 1/4 inch beyond the edge. Now it's kicked up almost like a little crown, and that will allow me to swipe the top about a 20-degree angle, swipe it towards me, and that little bit that you did beyond the edge is now going straight up and gives you something to swipe so that you can get a really nice edge to your cake. And we'll just keep going around just like this all the way around until you have your perfectly smooth top. And it kind of depends what you're going to do after this. Like if you're going to pipe a bunch of buttercream roses and put them on top, you don't have to get as precise. If you're going to pipe a border or do all kinds of sort of, or even fresh flowers on here, you don't have to get as precise on the top, but it is good practice and it's kind of fun to do this. And then to know whether or not you've got a nice straight top, you need to come down and look at it from the side because you can't really tell from this angle. So get right down there and look at it. This, for what I need, it looks great, but I just can't help myself. I have to give it one more swipe. Okay, that looks great. And so that's it. You can see that you can get this together pretty quickly. Like I said, that crumb coat step is awesome for guaranteeing that you're not going to have any crumbs on the outside, and really, really nice if you're new to this. Okay, so for the sort of finishing touch of my cake, if you notice the cover of my cake, I have these beautiful homemade marshmallows, and those are in the book. You can make the marshmallows. I have them already made. And I absolutely could not do my first Zoë Bakes Cakes event without using a blowtorch. So I have to get it. I have two. I have my big one that I just got from Home Depot. If you don't have a blowtorch, I highly recommend it because it's probably the most fun tool you will have in the kitchen. If you don't want to go with a big giant one like this from Home Depot, they do make like little kitchen versions, which are just awesome, but you know, they just don't have the same drama. So my homemade marshmallows on a sheet tray. You want to make sure you don't do this on parchment because it's paper. And we'll just toast up the rest of my marshmallows. You could absolutely do this over a fire with a stick, but this is maybe more fun. Get them nice and toasty. Not only are you getting that nice toasty bit on the outside, but also you're melting the inside of it, and it just has this most amazing texture. You're done. I like my marshmallows nice and dark. I think I might set off the fire. Okay. You gotta let that top cool just a little second, and then we can flip them over. Flip them over. And these marshmallows were flavored with cardamom. When I was whipping up the marshmallow, I threw in some ground cardamom, so I can smell that cardamom. It's so nice. And you can flavor your marshmallows with whatever you like. It's almost like the buttercream. The buttercream base is vanilla, but then you can go with whatever flavor combination you want. Peanut butter or Nutella or chocolate or raspberry preserves or, you know, lemon. So it's one of those things where you start with the base and then your imagination should just take you wherever you want to go with your cake. And it's similar to marshmallows. You can really get whatever flavor you want out of a marshmallow. Okay, so let's finish this up. some toasty. And then I can just pile those. I will get my cake onto a cake plate. Graham, can I ask you to do one more thing? Can you grab me just one of those white plates? So to get the cake off of the cake stand, you want to take your spatula and, perfect, thank you. You want a nice sturdy spatula to work with, especially if you're lifting a cake off of the stand, because you're going to use the spatula to carry a tiny bit of the weight of the cake. So you don't want something that's super flexible or flimsy. I'm just going to, first of all, get it loosened off of the cake turner, because as you're working with the buttercream, it's sort of connecting to the turner. So you don't want to just lift it up and then have the buttercream pull away from the cake. So you want to first sort of take it away from the turner. Then I'm just going to lift, let me see if you can see that. That looks good. I'm going to lift it up slightly and work my fingers under there so that I'm lifting it both with the spatula and my hand. And then I lay it down into the center of whatever plate or cake stand. And then I take my hand away and I leave the spatula there, because then I can lay it right on the plate and slip it out. And that way I don't have any finger marks on it. And it just moves really, really quickly. So I have my nice clean cake. It looks pretty straight, and it's just a nice canvas for whatever decorating you want to do. And now I can just pile up my homemade marshmallows on top of there. And I just think this is a really sort of, what I would probably recommend is that you refrigerate this buttercream for like at least 15-20 minutes so that it's hardened up a little bit, especially if your marshmallows are all warm. But this is going to do just great. And then just pile them up. And it's fun and it's festive and it's delicious. And that's it. And then we'll just break into one so that you can see. Look at that. Ooh, look at how gooey and yummy that is. So, oh, that is so good. And such a mess. So that's my cake. And that went together pretty quickly. You know, there are recipes in this book that are more steps, but I walk you through every single one of them. And like I said, I have the Cake Academy in there, and every recipe in the book refers to where in the Cake Academy that cake you'll find the more in-depth description of how to make the cake. So if you're doing something with meringue, I have a whole thing on all the different types of meringue, exactly how to go about making a meringue, the best eggs to use and what temperature they should be. So if you have experience, then you may not need it as much. Or the other really handy thing about the Cake Academy is, like, if you have your grandmother's recipe and she used to make it for you and it came out just spectacularly, and then she gave it to you and maybe the directions weren't quite as clear and you've been struggling to recreate it, with the Cake Academy, my intention is that you will have all of the tools and techniques that you need to make that recipe just as beautifully as you remember it. So it's not just for the recipes in my book. What I'm hoping is that you are going to come away from this having sort of what I learned in culinary school, what I learned in a professional kitchen, what I've learned over 30 years of baking, all those tips, all those tricks, none of them are hard. It's just I've had the experience of doing it so many times, and so I've shared it all in here. Some people have a difficult time with ganache, which is just chocolate and cream, and it's all about the ratio. It's all about how it goes together. And once in a while, depending on the type of chocolate, it breaks. It gets almost like not as smooth as you'd like. It looks like it's almost curdled. And I give you the tips and tricks of how to bring it all back together. So really, there's almost nothing that you can't fix, or you just cover it up. So anyway, here's my marshmallow topped chocolate cake. And thank you for joining me. I don't know how, I think if there's any questions, I would love to take your questions.
Hi, I'm back.
Hi. Hi.
Yeah, thank you so much. That looks amazing and
Yay.
was super mesmerizing watching the frosting process. So I was sort of zoned out a little bit, just like
that's great.
So we have a question here.
Yes.
Share the recipe. Well, the recipe is in the book, so I did just drop a link to Zoë Bakes Cakes
Yes.
on our website. Here is a comment from Allison, mother-daughter combo watching. We love everything you do. We're wondering where in the Twin Cities you go for the best specialty baking ingredients, such as Dutch processed cocoa.
Oh, okay. Well, it's so interesting because back when I was working in professional kitchens, that stuff was really hard to find outside of a professional kitchen. And now I can find Valrhona chocolate, which is one of my favorites, at Kowalski's or Byerly's or Lund's. Even I sometimes find all the things that I'm looking for. Maybe not Valrhona, but a lot of the ingredients at Cub Foods, Whole Foods. So these things have become easier and easier to find, in absolutely everything you can find online if you can't find it locally. So there's really nothing in the book that's that esoteric that I don't think you could find at one of our local grocery stores right here in the Twin Cities or wherever. Maybe if you're in like a rural community, you might have to rely more on ordering online.
Mm-hmm. Well, thank you. Hope that helps, Allison. And we have a question from Paula. Tips for cutting a perfect slice.
Oh, okay. So there's a couple of things. Maybe I should just cut this. One, maybe I would refrigerate it just a tiny bit because it's not that I couldn't get a nice slice and get a clean cut in the buttercream. But what will happen is because the buttercream on the inside is still soft, as I'm cutting it, it's going to compress the two layers of cake. And so I might get a little bit of a bulge. That might be a little more technical than you are looking for. But the best way to cut the cake, there's knives that I really like. Okay, so this one, what I like so much about this knife is not so much the shape of it, but how thin the blade is. You want a knife that's really, really thin. Like if I were to use this knife, which is, this is sort of a monster, but it's a very thick blade. So it's going to sort of pull down the cake as you're cutting it. Whereas this one is so thin, it goes in it like a razor blade. If you're cutting a cold cake, you want to dip your knife blade into a hot water. So what I usually do is like fill up a pitcher of hot water and I dip my blade in there so that the blade is really hot, and then it just cuts through cold buttercream or anything like it's, fresh, warm butter. So it'll just cut really, really easily. Now, having said that, most cakes, especially a buttercream cake, you want to serve at room temperature because buttercream just has this beautiful, luscious, silky texture when it's at room temperature. When it's cold, all that butter solidifies and it's just not as absolutely perfect as it could be. So I always recommend make your cake. If you're going to do it the day before, that's totally fine. Just bring it out so that it has ample time to warm up. So if it's chilly, if it's in the winter, give it a few hours at room temperature before you serve it. It will make the cake layers better. It'll make the buttercream better. But yeah.
Awesome. So we have a couple more questions. I'm going to skip ahead to one from Cindy because it is about the cake specifically. Why did you use hot coffee for that recipe?
Well, okay, so you don't absolutely have to, but because I have done it both ways. One thing about using the hot coffee is that it warms up the temperature of the batter. So it doesn't take as long to bake that way. There are certain recipes that call for like boiling water to activate the leavener. I haven't found that is that crucial with this recipe. So it's not so much to activate the leavener as it is to just warm up the batter so that when you go into the oven, it bakes a little bit quicker. Having said that, I have done it with not cold coffee, but just like the coffee's been sitting around, it's room temperature, and that totally works fine. It was, the way the cake comes out is absolutely the same. The timing of the baking might be a little bit different.
Oh, that's really cool. That never would have occurred to me. So here is, going backwards a little, from Erin. What is the most challenging cake you've ever made?
Oh, cake I've ever made. Well, there are certain, there are some cakes that are very delicate, and in terms of having to whip up the egg whites and then fold them into a mixture and then fold in other things. And that it's not so much that they're difficult, it's that you have to understand the timing. So, if you have something where you're whipping up egg whites, you don't want to then let those egg whites sit on the counter for 10 minutes, sometimes not even 5 minutes before you incorporate them, because a perfectly whipped up egg white, basically a meringue, where you're whipping up eggs and sugar, they will start to settle and the bubbles will start to collapse, and you just won't get the same kind of rise. It won't be as easy to fold in. So it's not so much that they're difficult. You just need to understand the timing. Get your egg whites whipped up and then immediately fold them into the batter. But I would say that's what came to mind. In the book, the whole thing leads up to a wedding cake. I have a 3-tier. Oh, look at that. I opened exactly to that page. So the whole thing, can you see it? The whole thing leads up to building a wedding cake. And I did this because you would not believe how often people either make their own wedding cake or they're making it for a friend. And so I really wanted people to, I love making wedding cakes, and they're not hard, but they are multi-steps. And so I really wanted to give people who are into that kind of a challenge, the sort of empowerment to go ahead and do something like that. Because basically what I did right here, if you did 2 more layers in different sizes, you would have a wedding cake. All you have to know how to do is put them together, how to stack them, how to give the support of it. So something like that, it's not difficult, but it's more steps. So I don't know if I answered the question.
No, I think I agree. And, I have had some, misadventures in baking, and it's just
Yes.
it is always the timing that it's like
Yes.
if I don't have myself organized, and I often don't ahead of time for like, a recipe that's not familiar, it's that's what's going to mess you up.
So that is such a good point, because in the Cake Academy, the very first thing that I take you from the very beginning all the way through to garnishes and decorating. But the very first thing I talk about is what we call mise en place, and that's putting everything in its place. So weighing out or measuring out all of your ingredients so that you have everything all ready to go and go into the recipe. You don't want to be starting a recipe and then weighing out your flour when your eggs are mixing. You want to have everything all ready to go so that they can just really simply, in the right order, in the right time, go into the bowl. So mise en place, or getting everything organized, just like what you said, is so key to success. And I have to say, it wasn't my nature to do that until I had to do like 20 recipes in a day. And then I realized, okay, I have to like get all of this recipe organized onto a tray, and then the next one and the next one. And then I could buzz through all of the recipes really, really quickly and easily and with total success. So it really does make a difference to be a little bit organized. And then also, if you're missing an ingredient, and you also know what the temperature of the ingredient should be. I would say temperature of ingredients is one of the most easily controlled things to create success in a recipe. So like if you need to cream butter, it needs to be at room temperature. So don't take the butter out of the refrigerator 2 minutes before you need to cream it. So read through the recipe and know what the temperature of the ingredients should be. One of the things is like if you need eggs in the recipe and they need to be room temperature, you can always put them in the shell in hot water and warm them up. So there are tricks and cheats in the book for if you do spontaneously just absolutely have to bake a cake and your things aren't at room temperature. I'll tell you how to get there.
Very awesome. We have so many good questions. So
okay, great. Awesome.
So we have one from Ella. Hi, Ella. Wondering what is your favorite flavor in a cake or cookie?
That's awesome. Okay, so obviously chocolate. I love chocolate. But I have to say, Ella, that it just depends on my mood. So it can be chocolate one day, lemon the next, key lime, or raspberry, or rhubarb. We're coming up to rhubarb season. I love rhubarb. So really, it just depends on the season. It depends on my mood. I love banana. So I have this almost like a banana cream pie, but as a cake, which I love. For those of you that are local, we have a restaurant here, Cafe Latte, and they do this turtle cake, which is chocolate and caramel and nuts and ganache, and it's just like super, super decadent. And I tried to recreate that because it's just so delicious. So yeah, I don't think I have one favorite. I have they're all my favorites.
And then from Beth, how would you recommend transporting a finished cake?
Oh, okay. I have these cake boxes. I don't know if you've seen these pie boxes. They're like wooden boxes with a top that slides out, or you can get the boxes that you get at a bakery. You can order those online, and those are really, really handy. If you don't have any of those, I'm going to show you what I do. Sorry, I didn't mean to disappear, but just take a sheet and like a silicone mat. Do you know, like a Silpat? Um, these are silicone mats. The reason that I say these is because when you put them on, they won't slide. So you don't want to put a plate or a cake on a surface that's slippery, because as you're driving around, it's going to move. So I really like these silicone mats because the cake will just stay still. So if you're going to just like a friend's house or family's house, this is just fine. Depending on the cake, you don't want to cover it. Like, don't put plastic wrap around it because you'll ruin the whatever you've decorated. Like, if you spend all this time piping flowers, even if they're chilled and cold and feel hard, as they start to warm up, they're going to get soft. So if you have a dome, great. If not, just leave it. Just leave it just like this. It will be fine. Yeah, and that's how I transport them.
Good tip. We have a two-part question from Jeff.
Okay.
What's the hardest part of writing a cookbook, and what is the most enjoyable part of writing a cookbook?
Okay, this is so easy. The hardest part is the writing. For me, I know that's not true for all cookbook authors, but for me, I could bake all day, every day, into the night. And that is like a total joy for me. So the recipe development, even the photography, because I took all of the photos in this book, except for the how-to photos, like the Cake Academy, my friend Sarah Kiefer, who wrote 100 Cookies, which is such an awesome book. She took all the pictures of my hands so that they could be my hands, that I could show you my methods. But I took all of the finished cake photos, and I love that. So those two things are easy and joyful for me. I've turned into a writer, but that was the part that was intimidating to me at first. Now I love it. Now that I'm on my 9th cookbook, I'm starting. I'm starting to enjoy it. I feel like I'm a decent writer. It's just that's the part that was hard for me.
Yeah, absolutely. So here's one from Carolina. Does the book have
Yes.
recipes with tips for using flavored whipped cream, for example, raspberry whipped cream?
Yes, it sure does. I have in the book my perfect whipped cream. And it's not so much what's in the whipped cream, it's my technique of making whipped cream, which is much different than most people. Basically, you do it low and slow on the mixer so that you create tiny, tiny little air bubbles, so that when you have whipped cream on your cake or in your cake, it won't collapse and it won't weep. I've had whipped cream that lasted 3 or 4 days and stayed perfectly beautiful and fluffy and wonderful. And so the technique of making whipped cream, super simple, but use my technique and it will be a total success. Now, having said that, I think I have like 8 different flavors of whipped cream in the book. So you can add fresh raspberries or raspberry preserves. You can add chocolate. You can add coffee. You can do a caramel whipped cream. So all different flavors. And just get this absolutely beautiful consistency that will last for days. Not that the cake is going to last that long. I mean, yeah, if the cakes last that long, I'll be surprised, but they could.
Yes, awesome. That's so many whipped creams. So question from Allison, which is a really good one, especially for cookbook writing. How many times do you test a recipe before it's the final version in the book?
Okay, well, that's another good one, because sometimes it's one, like sometimes I just nail it on the first go. And sometimes it's literally a dozen, if not more times. Like sometimes I wish it was a dozen. There's some times when I just can't get the recipe, but I am so in love with the concept, but I just don't love how it's going and I can't let it go. And so I will just try and try and try. So sometimes it's the one time, sometimes it's a dozen times. And then I send it to another tester. I have a recipe tester who then goes through the whole book and tests all the recipes. So it's a lot. I really feel like I feel like a cookbook is only as good as the editors and the recipe testers. So yeah. So it just depends on the recipe and how lucky I get.
Yeah, well, that's the thing about cookbooks specifically, is like these recipes have been tested and they've been edited and they've been, checked and checked again. So you can be pretty confident going in.
Yes, absolutely.
So one more question from Carolina. What camera do you recommend for taking good food pictures? Do you have one?
Well, there's so many. And honestly, like, my son has a Canon. Graham, what is the Canon that Henry uses? What is this camera?
M50.
An M50? Okay. So there's like digital cameras now. I have a Mark II camera, a Mark II Canon.
Canon 5D Mark II.
A Canon 5D Mark II. So, okay. So here's the thing is I studied photography in college, but I never understood the technical parts of it. I have a very good instinct with a camera, but I do not know the technical parts of it very well. But I do know that my Canon Mark II is big, expensive, and I think my son's little Canon takes just as good photographs. So you don't have to spend a ton of money to get a real, and even the phone. I think some people have just absolutely beautiful, gorgeous photographs taken off of their phone. I'm just used to the camera that I use. So
your camera's 10, 12 years old.
My camera's 12 years old, but I can't part with it because then I would have to learn an entirely new camera. This is probably so disappointing, this answer, but
no, it's a good answer because it's like, it's not the camera, it's, you can learn good photos with a lot of it.
No. I mean, if I can do it, trust me, anybody can take good photographs. One thing I have to say is, play around with your light source, because I take all of my photographs. I rely 100% on natural lighting because I don't know how to use, like strobe lighting or anything like that. And just play around with different places in your kitchen or your home and find that magic spot. I have my magic spot where I take all of my photographs. So.
Awesome. We have not a question, but just I want to say hello to Cindy, who's watching, who is apparently a professional recipe tester.
Oh, awesome.
She liked your answer about recipe testers.
Yes.
Thanks for watching, Cindy. And finally, we have another question from Allison. What do you do with all the cakes you bake during testing?
Well, right now, both of my boys are home, and they're both 6 feet tall and in their early 20s, so they make fast work of them. And I have neighbors that receive lots of them, and I have family in town and they receive lots of them, but I gift lots and lots of cake to my friends and neighbors and family. That's the beauty of testing. When I was testing the book, everybody was super eager to sign up to receive these cakes. And then by the end, they were like, oh, more cake. And then I had them testing the recipes. So
yeah.
Yes, it was awesome.
Awesome. Well, I think that made it through all of our questions. Thank you, everyone who watched and chatted along with us, and for your awesome questions. I just want to remind you that I did put the link to where you can purchase signed copies of Zoë Bakes Cakes on the Majors and Quinn website. Some of you watching are those of you who already had purchased the book before ahead of time, before it publishes tomorrow. And some of you are watching because you just registered for our just viewing through Eventbrite. If you are one of those people, in your email, you should also have a coupon code for $5 off because you paid $5 through Eventbrite to come to the event. So you can go to our website and use that code. It does have to be used online. It can be used for these copies of Zoë Bakes Cakes. So you just enter the code at checkout. Whichever type of customer you were, thank you so much for being here. We have one more question from Jeff. When will more shows be released on Magnolia?
Thank you for asking. There's 10 more episodes to come, and I don't have a definite answer. So it's a brand new network. They're launching the full network in July. And so it will absolutely be by July, but there also have been, they've been adding more and more shows to Discovery Plus, but we never know when that will be. So they are coming, and there's 10 more of them in this season. I just don't know exactly when, but absolutely by July.
Awesome. Yeah. Check it out. It's called Zoë Bakes.
It's called Zoë Bakes. Yes.
So again, another final question sneaking in under the wire from Beth.
Sure.
Does your book cover anything about baking at altitude?
Well, a little tiny bit. But maybe what I always suggest with baking at altitude, because I have baked quite a few cakes in Denver. And it did require some adjusting, but it's not a lot. If you go any higher than that, I'm really kind of out of my element, being from one of the flattest states. But usually in those areas, there's a university or a really good resource. And I rely on those whenever I'm baking at high altitude. So it's not, I don't consider myself an expert at it. So I would lean on one of those places. And if you have questions about it, some that I trust, you can get in touch with me and I can give you the ones that I've used in Colorado.
All right. Well, speaking of how to get in touch with you, how should people do that? You have a website.
Yes. I am on Instagram, Zoë Bakes, kind of 24/7. And Zoë Bakes, the website. But I would say, get in touch with me on Instagram or the website, and I will find your questions. And if you DM me and I don't return it right away, try again, because they sometimes come through fast and furious, and I miss them. It's not because I'm ignoring you, it's just because it slipped away. So please try again, and I will.
Great. Well, thank you so much, Zoë. Thanks again, everyone, for being here and watching and asking great questions.
They were awesome.
Questions about the book or how to get the book, you can reach out to us at Majors and Quinn. You can find our website, majorsandquinn.com. You can call us. You can email us. We can help you with anything book related. And if you have any questions for Zoë, she just told you where to find her on Instagram or her website. So thanks so much and have a wonderful evening.
Great. Thank you all for coming. This was so much fun. And thank you for having me, Majors and Quinn. This was beautiful, and happy baking.